Hello and welcome to video lecture series in political science. Today we are going to discuss chapter 3 titled as US Hegemony in World Politics from your textbook Contemporary World Politics. As you know that we have divided this chapter into 4 parts. So far in the first 2 parts we have discussed about the concept of hegemony in the field of international relations. We have discussed about the US as a hegemon and the unipolarity after the fall of or the collapse of the USSR. In the previous parts, we have also discussed about the military capacity of the US, which was seen in the Iraq war and in number of other military operations carried out by the US world over. Today, we will discuss about Operation Iraqi Freedom and the structural hegemony of the US. Now, let us start with Operation Iraqi Freedom. After the attack on World Trade Center on 9/11, the US had openly declared its intention to fight against terrorism. This fight was called as War Against Terrorism, in which large number of countries came together because all of them were suffering from this malaise called as terrorism. The US carried out military operations in Afghanistan where it suspected that Al-Qaeda runs its training camps and Bin Laden was hiding. On 19th March 2003, the US launched an offensive on Iraq once again. Earlier it had happened in 1991 for the liberation of Kuwait. The earlier invasion of 1991 was known as Operation Desert Storm. This one in 2003 is called as Operation Iraqi Freedom. But what was the reason for attack this time? Why did US invade Iraq once again? The apparent reason or the obvious reason given for the attack was to prevent Iraq from developing weapons of mass destruction, which are called as WMDs as a short form. Now, what happened after attack on the WTC World Trade Center? The US intelligence agencies, they stepped up their investigations into Iraq's possible connection with terrorist organization Al-Qaeda. The US identified or labeled Iraq as a rogue force. Rogue means somebody which is uncontrollable. And it thought that Iraq is financing and training terrorists. The US also suspected that Iraq is developing biological and chemical weapons. Despite the fact that UN teams of inspector could not find any evidence of WMDs or weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and also that the United Nations did not agree to attack Iraq, Bush administration or George Bush announced that the US was prepared to launch a military action against Iraq all by itself. At first only Britain, the UK agreed to join the attack. Later on, more than 40 countries joined the US-led coalition of the willing nations during the Iraq invasion. Justifying this invasion of Iraq, President George Bush insisted that the paramount goal of the war was to free Iraq from dictatorship of Saddam Hussein. They said we wanted to stabilize the Middle East region and bring democracy to Iraq. However, Bush received harsh criticism for the war. Saddam Hussein managed to escape the attack and he went into hiding shortly after the start of the war, although he was later captured on December 15, 2003, and he was executed soon within a month after he was caught. The US is accused for this attack. Why? Because people say that there were no WMDs in Iraq. Still the US attacked Iraq because the US was interested in the Iraqi oil fields and wanted to establish a US friendly government in the region. But has the US been able to bring peace in the region or establish democracy, what it intended to do, the purported reason for the attack? No, not yet. Even after spending millions of dollars on these peacekeeping missions or military invasions to establish democracy or stability, peace is still far away from Iraq. rather than promotion of democracy, a full-fledged insurgency has ignited in Iraq against the US occupation. The US also has lost around 3,000 military people and more than 23,000 people have been wounded. At the same time, thousands of Iraqis, approximately 50,000, including both civilian population and military people, have been killed in the attacks. People in Iraq live under constant threat of death occurring at any point of time. The American invasion of Iraq also revealed its own vulnerabilities, that is, its own weaknesses in some way or the other. Iraqi people have not been happy or they have not been convinced by the American occupation. They do not agree that Americans are here to promote stability, peace and democracy in the region. On the contrary, they protest against the presence of military in their country. The operation cannot be called successful because it has not achieved what it was supposed to achieve. But for us, as a student of political science and world politics, it is important to understand that why have Americans failed in establishing or in achieving what they wanted to achieve. The reason for this failure is historical, or we can say that historically the imperial powers have been using force to mainly achieve 4 goals. What are these 4 goals? They use force to either conquer, that is capture somebody, deter, that is stop somebody, punish, that is to use force, and police, that is to bring order. The Iraq invasion shows that Americans have formidable capacity to conquer, that is they have captured and controlled. Similarly, they have capacity to deter, that is to stop and punish also. However, there is a problem in achieving the 4th goal, that is the ability to police. And there are many social, cultural, ideological, political and civilizational reasons for this problem not being able to police, because there is a difference between the cultures of the 2 countries. And now, with no sound reason or justification for the war, and without reaching any concrete conclusion or achieving its purported or set goal, America's invasion of Iraq has been seen both a military and a political failure. They have not been able to wipe out terrorist camps from the region completely. But one thing is evident out of these attacks, that the US is certainly a hard power. It is a hegemony. All these examples that we have discussed establish enoughly that US has the ability to penetrate in any region of the world very successfully. As you have seen that in many cases, the United States has not even bothered about the UN sanctions or the consent of the United Nations. It has gone ahead without the consent of the international bodies, and in many regions, it has not even taken help of the other coalition forces. The US has the military capacity beyond the reach of any other nation in the world. So, this establishes that US is a military power, a hard power and a hegemon. Now, let us discuss another dimension of hegemony, that is the structural power, and let us see or analyze that is the US a structural power as well. Now, before we see that is US a structural power, let us discuss what is structural power. Let us define it in the first instance. According to the scholar Susan Strange, a structural power is the power to shape and determine the structures of the global political economy, within which other states, their political institutions, their economic enterprises, their scientists, their professionals have to operate. This structural power means rather more than the power to set the agenda of discussion or to design the international regimes of rules and customs that are supposed to govern international economic relations. Simply stating, it is that who decides the rule of the game. Structural power, simply saying, confers the power to decide how things shall be done, the power to shape framework that this is how the things are going to take shape or will happen in future, within which the other states relate to each other, relate to people, or relate to one another. That is one aspect of the structural power, but not all of it. Structural power lies within those in a position to exercise control over other people's security. That is, they can threaten other people also, or they can ensure security to other people that do not fear, we are there, or fear us because we can damage you. With those able to control and decide the manner or mode of production of goods and services, say economic organization, and those who are able to control the supply and distribution of credit. Now, structural power can also be exercised by those who possess knowledge, who can wholly or partially limit or decide the terms of access to it. Say for example, transfer of technology in the modern era is very important, but some of the technology is kept very secret, and those who have this knowledge, those who have this technology do not share it with others so easily. If you look around the world economy, then an open world economy requires a hegemon or a dominant power to support its creation and existence. The dominant power here in the world economy or hegemon should have the ability and the desire to establish certain norms for maintaining and sustaining order in the global system. It's like, a very simple example of a monitor sitting in the class who takes control of the class in the absence of the teacher, and he decides what is to be done and how the discipline is to be maintained. Although of course, the hegemon in the world economy does this ordering, decides the rule for its own advantage, but it also faces competition from other players in the system. Within this broad framework of defining structural power, the US has certainly played a role of a hegemon. It has certainly become a disciplining power, or it is deciding the rules of the game. The structural power of the US is reflected in the role that America has played in providing global public goods. What are global public goods? Global public goods are commodities, services or resources which are shared by all the members in the society or that have shared benefits. Consumption of these goods by one individual does not reduce its availability for the others, for example, fresh air or the roads. In the case of world economy, the best example of global public goods is sea lanes of communication or SLOCs. Now, what are SLOCs? SLOCs or sea lanes of communication are sea or marine routes between ports used for trade by merchant ships, logistics and naval forces to carry out various types of activities and operations. Free trade in the world economy would not have been possible without open and secure SLOCs. It is the naval power of the US that frames the law of the sea and ensures the freedom and security of movement of ships all over the world, which carry out various types of trades and military operations. Now, as you can see in this picture, the red lines are SLOCs which show the flow of marine traffic all over the world, and the darkest the line, that is red in color, the heavier is the traffic flowing on that particular route. Yet another example of global public good is internet. Our life in present times is unimaginable without the presence of WWW, that is World Wide Web, and our dependence on this, on internet, will further grow in future. Do you know that the internet is the result of the US military project that began in 1950s? The internet depends upon global satellite network systems, and most of these satellites are owned by the US. The US is the largest economy of the world. All the estimates indicate that its share is approximately around 20 to 25% in totality. The US accounts for 15% of the world trade, and there is no sector in the world economy where a US firm has not left its mark, and in every sector a US company features among the top 3 ranking companies. As you can look into this picture, the dark blue color is the percentage of GDP by the US, that is world GDP, percentage of the world GDP. The other almost 20 to 25% comes from East Asia, the one in green comes from Western Europe, and India shows South Asia, primarily not India, but the South Asia. The US contributes around 20 to 25% to the world GDP. Although the Soviet model of planned economy was an alternate model to market economy, and it was adopted by most of the countries during the Cold War, but the world economy still primarily remained capitalistic only. The US is dominating the world economy because of its structural power, the power that it wields. The Bretton Woods system instituted by the US continues to be the basic structure of world economy. The World Bank, WTO, World Trade Organization, IMF, International Monetary Fund are all initiatives by the US. The economic might of the US, like its military might, remains unchallenged. The US hegemony is so overpowering that studying business has also become one of the foremost career options for the young ones, that is, obtaining a degree in business or doing MBA. Today, world over, MBA is one of the most prestigious degrees, and management and its subfields are most aspired careers for young people. Now, apart from being a hard power and a structural hegemon, there is a third dimension to US hegemony also. This dimension is related to soft aspects that makes US a soft power as well. Unlike military and economic dimension, this aspect is related to ideological and cultural dimensions. What do we mean by this? We will discuss that in the next part of this chapter. To conclude this part, let us summarize what we discussed in this part of the chapter. We discussed about Operation Iraqi Freedom, attempt to find WMDs in Iraq, and invasion of Iraq by US in 2003 once again. We discussed the US as a structural power or US as a structural hegemon also. We discussed about global public goods and how the US decides about the rule of the game in international economy as well. In the next part of this chapter, we will discuss about the US as a soft power and the relationship between India and the US. Till then, you can enjoy reading this part of the chapter. Thank you.